Perfect. Okay. Guys, welcome to episode 3 of the Periti Pod, or called The Proof, now we're calling it. And I think it's episode 3, so we'll roll with it. But today's guest, Jason Driver, from one of our value customers here at Periti. Jason our relationship started, I suppose, with Jason and the Zeelo team almost a year ago today in the room I'm sitting in. And we wanted to do this actually side by side, but shame on me, I couldn't sort out the mic situation and the stand situation. So here we are in separate rooms of the same office. So we're trying to make it work here. But Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan, and great to be on the show. Really looking forward to talking all things HubSpot, all things Zeelo, and also the relationship we have with Periti too.
Absolutely. Super exciting. I remember going back to that time when we started talking to you guys again, did a day-long discovery here in the office. And I remember coming away from there super pumped about, where Zeelo were going, what you were trying to do, and all the green field you had to run in from a HubSpot perspective, but also from a business process perspective. And it's clear that you guys had the vision too, given the buy-in that you kind of gave to that session. And I suppose as we've worked with you, as we've developed the relationship, some really cool things have come up. Obviously, the great work that the team have done, the great work that you guys have done alongside the team. But even more recently, saw it on LinkedIn, and I sent it to you, that the expansion into Ireland is a huge claim of victory, I suppose, for what you're trying to do. And then it's almost like a full circle moment for us here on our side, obviously headquartered in Dublin, going over to visit you guys initially, and then seeing you guys kind of come over to our side of the Irish Sea too, to kind of stamp that flag and plant it and really establish Zeelo as a brand over there. So just for the listeners who I suppose are unfamiliar with Zeelo and the industry and what you do, give the guys an overview.
Yeah, absolutely. So Zeelo really is the global leader in employee and student shuttle transportation. As you suggested, we started things out in the UK about 10 years ago. And have since launched both in the US and also in Ireland as well, and are rapidly expanding across both of those markets. Really, we take all of the complexity out of shuttle transportation for schools and also for corporations. We have a solid tech stack, which we develop in-house, and that technology allows us to really efficiently manage these shuttle transportation programs. And then we supplement that with other softwares, such as HubSpot being the main one. And really that allows us to deliver these transportation programs in a really efficient, seamless way, and really take all of the hassle out of things for corporations and education institutions.
Yeah, and you guys, I know for what you can declare and what you can disclose, but I know when we were at the discovery session, you guys were talking to me about the logos you currently have and even some big, exciting, ongoing deals that are potentially going to be signed. But what type of companies typically rely on Zeelo to get their employees from A to B, or even the education sector students from A to B?
Yeah, and we are fortunate that we have some really, really great companies and schools that work with us. The way I describe the sorts of people we work with is two main segments. You have the education customers, of which predominantly that's private schools and universities. And then on the corporate side, we partner with corporations or shift-based corporations such as Amazon or ABP Foods or Arla Foods, those sorts of corporations. And then also office-based, where people want to get to and from the headquarters, people like McLaren, or Alexia and AstraZeneca, those sorts of companies that we work with. So yeah, two main segments of education and corporates. And then within that, you have schools, universities based or corporate based. The reasons they use us are many. First of all, there's some people who have existing programs. Generally, they have in-house teams who manage the transportation program and all the complexity that comes with managing transportation. It's not a simple thing. There's things that happen out on the roads or in preparation or after the fact that are quite complex and operationally intensive. So those in-house teams have a huge amount of work and often don't have the tools or technology or process to really help them in the most efficient ways. And then you also have other companies who are considering these sorts of programs but don't have an in-house team to do it. And in either of those situations, we take all of the hassle out of it and leverage our 10 years of experience, world-class tools and systems and an internal team to manage those programs for them.
Yeah, and even the names that you're just after, kind of name it out there, McLaren, Amazon, AstraZeneca, I suppose naively before entering Zeelo's world, I never even considered how they get their their staff from A to B, or if there's shift work, for example, that there's has to be transport, all around the clock to keep these economies, which, Amazon is probably an economy of its own. I mean, from that kind of perspective, and in terms of how you go after these logos, how is the what's the strategy behind kind of securing business with one of these well-known, world-renowned brands?
Yeah, so I mean, I think just touching on the real life use case, now I can dive into how we go about working with them. But it's a super real problem, and it's one that affects so many people in the markets we operate in, but also worldwide. We often talk about the phrase public transport deserts or public transit deserts, where there literally is no public transit to get to and from these places of works. And as you highlighted, at the hours and the people need at 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever it may be, or even in the middle of the day. And so, we operate in an industry where there is a real problem, and therefore there's a real solution to be had if executed in the right way. And I think that in itself really helps these conversations, because once you start speaking to the right people, they feel those problems day to day. We're fortunate that we work with some of these companies already, and a big part of our growth strategy is land and expand. So, we work with one warehouse in a big corporation on the shift-based side of things. And then once you prove things out and start doing things in the right way, understand the organization, you can then start to, over time, build that trust and leverage that in other warehouses within the same organization. And then the other way that our sales team is working is very much account-based. So super targeted on the verticals, on the companies that we want to work with, and then multi-layering different contacts within that, multi-threading different contacts within that, to make sure that we determine the ICP, we determine the companies we want to go after, and then really try and speak to the right people to get that ball rolling and that chain reaction rolling.
Absolutely. I know the process side of things is one thing, and I suppose the ambition you have for that account management approach and that land and expand approach, the idea is great, but in practice, you need certain things to be in place to execute upon that. And I know we discussed before we hit record today about Zeelo's journey from a tech stack perspective and how you've matured and grown over time with HubSpot at the helm, of course. Talk to us a little bit about that journey. I know you've been heavily involved at the coalface in this continuous optimization and improvement of what Zeelo are doing from a technology perspective.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, for at the very highest level, we have two sides of our tech stack. We have the software that we develop internally, and we have a huge amount of investment that goes into that through product and engineering teams. Really, the way we think about that is everything that we can't use a third-party tool for, and that is fundamental to the way we operate our services, goes through what we call mission control, but our internal software that we develop and control. And then everything outside of that, we work with other softwares to get up and running. The journey of that has been very much one of a very traditional startup story, where every few months a new shiny thing comes and you set it up and you start using it. And some people use that in a certain way, and some people use it in a different way, and some people don't use it at all. And really the journey we've been on over the past year or year and a half, as you're suggesting, is one where we really try to formalize our tools and processes that sit outside of, or sit across the whole tech stack, really. And my role is specifically around anything that's not within the kind of core platform. And yeah, HubSpot is forming the center of that. The story of how HubSpot has developed at Zeelo started, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago, when we were using a pretty basic deal management system. At that point, we had one of our co-founders selling and one or two other salespeople selling. And so it kind of worked at that scale, and to have a pretty basic deal management system. But as we expanded the sales team, we needed to translate that kind of founder-led sales motion into something that was more sophisticated, repeatable, data-led, with the right reporting and plugins to the marketing side of things. So we went on that journey, and up until about a year ago, it was predominantly being used. HubSpot was predominantly being used by the sales and go-to-market teams. And then, we had a bit of a company strategy rethink. And one of the main strategic levers we wanted to pull on was how to really reconfigure our core workflows to start to deliver the services in a really cost-efficient way, based on the 10 years of knowledge we've had. And we started to do an analysis of all of the software that the kind of post-sale teams were doing, were using. And the decision we came to was to start using HubSpot in a much more robust way and really think about the tool stack across all areas of pre-sales and post-sales as being one where you've got mission control and HubSpot complementing each other and working together with some other systems plugged into it. And that journey really started about 6 months, 8 months ago, towards the back end of 2025. And until we have that complete, it's a 1 or 2 year project. It's a pretty substantial thing we're going after to really optimize the processes and the tools that the teams use.
I don't want to dive into the whole software debate and where the industry is going at the minute, but listening to podcasts and figureheads talking about the direction that they think software is going, it seems to be, obviously it's never been easier to procure software. It's never been easier to rip it out and port your data from one piece to another. But I think Zeelo is certainly a shining example of the benefits that you can get from actually committing to building your operations around, as you said, mission control and HubSpot in tandem, but HubSpot being that more front end piece, mission control being that back end operational piece, and distilling the noise away, I suppose, of everything you could be procuring at any one time and bolting things together, because that's where we see a lot of issues, is where companies don't commit, and it's a race to the bottom for the software companies, but also you're constantly changing processes. Adoption is constantly being strained in these companies that are lifting and shifting on a regular basis. So not to insinuate that you haven't had your challenges with HubSpot and mission control and getting the system up and running, but just for the listeners, I suppose, and with the intent that someone listening to this could benefit from maybe the challenges that Zeelo faced and how you navigated them, talk to us a little bit about some of the areas that may have been struggles and how you kind of overcame them.
Yeah. So, I picked up the HubSpot baton about a year ago after it had been being used for 3 or 4 years, as I said, predominantly on the go-to-market side of things. And over those 3 or 4 years, I think we had lots of different HubSpot admins doing lots of different things in different ways. And so when I started to pick it up, and still ongoing, to be completely honest, we have a huge amount of legacy properties and objects and workflows and reports and lists and all of the different elements of HubSpot that are out there. So I guess a piece of advice off the back of that would be to get the governance, permission structures, ways of working set up on day one or as close to it as possible, because it can spiral very, very quickly, and document everything in the right way. Not pages and pages of documents that people will never read, but a brief description of how things are built in HubSpot for each element that you're building out. And I think that then allows you to continue to change things quickly without this constant worry in the back of your head that if I change something over here, will it affect 10 things over there that I didn't even know existed? So that's one thing. And then the other I would say is just adoption. I think that spending time with the teams on how they're actually using the tools you put in front of them can't be overstated. It's one thing, having workshops and developing requirements and iterating and building something that is there or thereabouts. But the way it's actually used in reality is completely different. So that giving yourself enough time when you're planning projects and planning different feature releases in HubSpot and anything is what actually happens in real life. And do we give ourselves enough time to sit with the teams, iterate, understand how it's being used, rather than just going straight to the next feature release, making sure you iterate on that during that post-go live phase.
I think it all comes back to the adoption piece, as you mentioned, and the governance and documentation around it. We were surprised at this, but Luke, our global sales director, and Sebastian, our director of service delivery, did a bit of a reporting exercise in the last couple of weeks, and they went through every project, so 650 of them that we've done to date in the life cycle of Periti, and they interrogated where we spent our time during those projects. And Luke actually asked me, guess how much time we actually spend configuring HubSpot in all of our projects. And I was like, probably half the time, 50% of the time maybe. He's like, only about 20% of the time do we spend actually configuring the tool. Most of it is, as he said, documenting what we've done. Most of it is project management. Most of it is training. It's adoption, it's ad hoc queries. It's when a system goes live and the initial panic sets in on a team that, oh my God, this is what I'm going to be using for the foreseeable. That we're on hand to kind of calm people down and talk them through the navigation and then the user interface and things like that. so much more goes into the project than just the nuts and bolts. And I think it's very telling based on what you've kind of touched on there. And I know you did mention it in the discovery day we did, that yes, all the features and the processes are great, but how are we actually going to get the team using this? Because we speak to a lot of clients where there's a history of maladoption. And we need to, I suppose, not only implement the tool that fits, but change the culture a little bit, because when projects are repeated and they fail, I had a call on this yesterday where this is the third go round for a company and it's their kind of last hurrah that they're going to try and do this sales process optimization using HubSpot. Previous tools they tried just didn't work. HubSpot is the third try. And now there's an element of fatigue on their team that they warned us about, that they think it's, here comes another software that they're going to try and make us use. And that's the biggest challenge of the project. It's not overly complex from a configuration perspective, but I think the analysis that Seb and Luke did are really shaping my approach as to how we approach projects. And again, it all confirms what we're thinking here, that you guys who are super successful in using HubSpot and have gotten great adoption and are building upon it and trust HubSpot as the basis for what you do, by focusing on that, you've ensured success. So any listeners out there who are doing projects, who are about to do projects, don't skimp on the adoption and the project management, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Moving.
The other
Yes.
the other thing on that sort of topic as well is the front end of things. You know, we live in a world where vibe coding and all of that is up and coming, and rightly so, and there's places for it. But there's also something to be said for spending the time with the relevant people in the organization and really deeply understanding the requirements. And the phrase "go slow to go fast" is something we band about quite a lot within the teams that are working on this rollout. And we've really found value in that. So the 20% configuring HubSpot, once I think it through, actually makes sense. And I think outside of that, it's probably 20, 30, 40% before you start doing anything, and 20, 30, 40% afterwards as well. But that bit before is so crucial.
Yeah, I know we were talking about running before the podcast, but it's topical at the minute. I'm in the midst of training for a half marathon, but when you kind of when Runa tells me to hit certain times or puts me in a certain plan, and I have to kind of do X, Y, Z, that kind of saying or a similar saying is in my head: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And if you just keep that in the back of your mind, you're constantly kind of trundling towards progress on the finish line. It's when you try and exert yourself too much, that's injury, burnout. You know, take what you will and correlate that to business, but that's maladoption, you know, in the CRM world, if we look at it that way. Now that obviously speaking from a privileged position for Zeelo, are getting a lot out of HubSpot and have a very exciting trajectory ahead. I know I hinted at it at the start, but that expansion into Ireland is huge. What are the kind of long-term objectives for the company?
Yeah, so I think at a very high level, we're at a point where I've mentioned it a couple of times, we've been operating for 10 years in one way or another. And now we really see this as a time to use all of that knowledge to break through and to really accelerate our growth, but do it in a really profitable way as well. So there's three main areas that we're focusing on in terms of growth and ambition. The first is market expansion, which we've touched on. You know, we're UK headquartered and we have a very large footprint here. We launched in the US and Ireland over the past few years, and are also rapidly expanding there, but see huge opportunities in those markets with our existing product offering. The second area of expansion is across different verticals. So within the education sector, we predominantly work with schools or private schools, a bit around universities as well, but we really see universities as a target customer as well. They often offer transportation programs, shuttles to their students or even staff. And also on the business side, we also see big opportunity in the construction sector. So that's something else we're looking at. You know, you have these enormous construction sites where there's not really space allocated for parking because they're building a building or a train station or whatever it may be. And so you have a real problem there of how do people get to this construction site, often at very early hours of the day. And so that's another area within the business or corporate segment, but also doubling down on all of the segments that I've mentioned already. And then the third area I guess I'd talk to is product expansion. So right now we've been laser focused on shuttle transportation. Predominantly that means, you know, a bus that might stop at 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 stops, depending on what the customer needs, on kind of fixed schedules a day. We have some that are more flexible than that, but that's That's broadly it. But we want to expand outside of that with offerings like charter. So, for example, a school has lots of school trips, or a company has their Christmas party. Those sorts of one-off or more short-term events, and delivering that in a really efficient way. Experimenting with things like carpool or van pool, which is quite large in the US, but is in the UK and Ireland as well. And how can we integrate that into the platform to give a total ground transportation solution to our customers? And then the other thing is really considering how autonomous vehicles will change the industry. The way we operate is that we partner with local bus and coach operators. So we don't own any buses or employ any drivers ourselves. We have really fantastic partners across all of the markets that we go together with. But autonomous vehicles are there in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years' time. Well, depends who you listen to. And that might change what we can do, and also the price point we can offer that to our customers at. So they're different product expansions that we're also thinking about.
On the autonomous vehicle side of things, inbound in San Fran last year, I wasn't there, but hearing the reports from the guys of just the new experience of seeing a Tesla cruise down the road by itself, and by all accounts, I haven't looked into the numbers deeply, but it's a lot safer. Autonomous vehicles in the sample size that they have, super interesting area, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of competition in that area as well in terms of what you're trying to do. In terms of how what you're excited about there, even from a personal perspective, as Zeelo continues to grow, no doubt your role and your involvement will be magnified as well in the company. But where do you kind of see the lay of the land going over the next, say, 12, 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it before, the problem we solve is real. And so with that, there is excitement, because you see the impact day to day of the sorts of things that you're contributing towards. So that won't change in the next 12 to 18 months. I think what will change is more internally. One of the elements that I really enjoy about my job, and I think any kind of HubSpot admin could, is fundamentally it's about enabling people internally to do the best job they can with the right tools to deliver a great service at a cost-effective price. And I think where we're getting to now or in the next month or two is really having the foundations built out in HubSpot. And then from there, we can really start doing some really more advanced stuff, having spent 6 months or a year building out the foundations, and really start to join all of the dots between all the different areas of the organization and the operation, and leverage that to much more efficiently manage the program and enable people internally to spend their time where it really matters.
100%. And obviously building the more advanced stuff, as you've alluded to there. I'm pretty sure I speak for the team when I say you've already tested the limits of the capabilities of our team from a technical perspective. So yeah, with what you're trying to do at Zeelo and the direction you guys are going, we're getting the kind of downstream benefits of becoming more competent with trying to keep up with the imagination that you guys have in using HubSpot. So super exciting, as I said, from when we first started the conversation here a year ago. It was clear what the vision is, and it's really cool to see that progress and materialize as we go. And then, as I said, that seeing that Irish flag on the LinkedIn post and that you're expanding the reach there really kind of was the cherry on top there. So really looking forward to continue with the partnership. Hopefully the listeners found value in the story, and again, to reiterate and take some lessons away from the episode today. If you're embarking on a project in HubSpot, don't overlook the simple things: governance, adoption, having that foundation from which to build from, because guys at Zeelo are super advanced. They're worried about all the technical stuff now and pushing the boundaries of what the tool can do, but you have to start where you stand. And for most people, that's just getting a coherent foundation in place from which to build. So, Jason, thanks so much for your time today. Where can we, I suppose, where can Zeelo or even connected with yourself find you?
Yeah, for sure. So happy to give out my email. It's jason.driver, Driver. It's not a play on words. That is genuinely my last name, very topical to the industry.
Yeah, we didn't even mention that.
Jason.driver. jason.driver@zeelo.co. So you can email me there, or get in touch with Dan or the Periti team if you want to be passed through that way. And then, of course, our website. We have a wealth of knowledge on there, case studies, knowledge articles about how the product can be applied in real life. And there's also a get in touch form on there as well. So email me, email Dan, or visit our website.
100%. Well, Mr. Driver, thanks so much for your time. And guys, we'll see you on the next episode of Proof by Periti Digital.
Thanks, Dan.